Welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm Ulrika Malmgren, and I am so happy to be here today. I will be talking about software teaming, and don't worry, you're not in the wrong room. But the thing is that when Woody Zoll and his team were exploring this concept of working together in this way, they came up with this mock name, this joke of mob programming. And it does have these weird connotations, like in Swedish, it's bullying, and then mobs and gangsters. Yeah, it doesn't really do it for everyone. So the community has been trying to find some new names, and for now, Wood is always using the word software teaming, and so that's what I'll be using as well. And that's also the name of Woody's book. So if you want to read more about this topic, I would recommend the book. But I wanted to start today with a bit of an introduction before we get there, and to begin with, who am I? I am a tester who became an agile coach, who became a developer, and I've been working with software in different forms for about 16 years. And now, exclusively the past 6 years, I've been doing software teaming as a developer. And I've spoken at this conference twice before. The first time it was a workshop where we were exploring how you could be a better programmer by learning something about testing. And then there is another talk about quality in all its aspects and perspectives that you can find with JFocus. If you want to hear me talk more, like and subscribe. And so, how did this talk come to be? Well, to begin with, I noticed that whenever I started talking about software teaming, I would just not shut up. And that's still the case, and I just want to keep talking about it all the time. So if we're talking in the halls of the conference and after a while you're tired about talking about software teaming, it's completely fine to tell me to just, can we move on to another topic or something? I won't be offended because, I just can't stop myself. And then one other thing I think it's interesting to know about this talk is that when I started preparing it, I quickly came to realize that it was a bit odd to do a talk about collaboration, such intense collaboration, on my own, like sitting in my own room doing this. So what I did is that we had some discussions at work, and I talked to my colleagues, and we had a lot of group discussions. And so the material that I'm presenting today, these are all thoughts that we have come up with together. These are not things that I think only for myself. These are things that we talked about together and patterns that we saw together and so forth. And my colleagues, they have experiences from our present company, but some also have experience from other companies. Some have been doing software teaming face-to-face, others have only done it remotely, and some people have done both. So it's a wide array of experiences that I've gathered together into this talk. And it also means that I feel very calm standing here today, because when you're a speaker, you're always a bit second guessing yourself. Like you're supposed to be the expert of the topic, but you know that you're not really the expert on the topic. There's a lot of people who know more than you, or know other aspects than you. So all of this second guessing is going on, and there's always this smart ass in the room who's going to say, well, actually. But in this case, I know that these are not just my experiences, these are experiences of a lot of people. So I feel pretty calm standing here. But I also need to start with a disclaimer, because it's going to sound like I think this is the very best way of working, and like the only way you should be working. But the thing is that for my personality and my circumstances, this is perfect. But we all choose which problems we like to have. And this is a thing that suits me very well and my circumstances. But the thing is that there's some problems I don't have the patience for anymore. I could never find the enthusiasm to say, how can we have shorter stand-ups when we're a team of 10 people and our stand-ups take half an hour? I just seriously don't have the patience for that. It's not interesting for me. I would rather try to solve a problem which is like we're super frustrated with each other because we can't find a good design and we don't know how to talk to each other. Like that's interesting. But shorter stand-ups, not for me. But the thing is that if you value the same things as I value, you could probably also enjoy this method of working. So what's our agenda for today then? I wanted to talk to you about, well, first what it is, so that we're on the same page here. Some benefits, some success factors if you want to try it, what makes it work. Some challenges. I want to mention how does remote impact this, if at all. And I wanted to end with a discussion and some final thoughts. So what is software teaming? Now, the definition of software teaming is that it's a software development approach where the whole team works on the same thing at the same time, in the same space, and at the same computer. So what does that look like concretely? Here's a sketch which sort of describes it. There is one computer, a big screen. It has to be big so that everyone can see. And then you have the team gathered around it. You have one person at the keyboard, typically called the driver. And then you have the navigators standing around. And you can invite a guest expert, as you can see on this sketch as well. And so the idea is that the team collectively comes up with what code should be written, and then the driver puts that through the keys into the computer. You typically have a timer so that you can rotate who sits at the keyboard, and that's really good because then everyone gets some time actually typing. So that's the basic setup in a sketch, and then I have some examples of what it could look like as photos. The cucumber team, RIP, and then a French mob programming session. I just love that they had that caption for that picture. It's clearly a very French session. And so then here's another example from my team. In this case, we're doing a hybrid remote because one of our colleagues was in Mexico. And so that's why we have a big Yeti microphone on the table so that he could hear us. And that's why we're wearing headphones so that we can hear him. But we're still screen sharing and using the same computer. And then finally, we have an example of my current setup, which is I have a screen, I have a keyboard, and I have a cat. And this is the setup that I recommend. You should have a screen, you should have a keyboard, and a cat when you're sitting at home working. A small dog is fine as well. And so then the specifics then. We're currently a very small team of 2 people. We used to be 3, but now we're 2. We do this fully remote. And I put the timer part in gray and brackets because as we are 2 people, we're not actually using the timer. But while we were 3 people, we were using the timer. And in that case, we had 8 minutes each at the keyboard, 2 rounds of that, and then we took a break. And the break is in the timer so that you don't forget it. And then one thing that I find is very interesting for us is that we only have one online presence as a team. So we have our computer on which we're using AnyDesk in this case, some sort of screen sharing tool. It could be TeamViewer, for example. That's the computer where we're typing all the code, but that's also the computer where we're answering emails. That's the computer where we're writing in Slack. And so this computer has an AD user. It has our name, our mob station name, our team name. So if we're responding to a question about a system that we're responsible for, we will answer as a team. We won't answer as individuals. If anyone asks a question, they will ask the team. They won't ask the individuals. And this is really, really good because if you're sick one day, you don't get pinged individually. It's not you who get the ping that something is happening. Can you fix this? It's the team that gets the ping, and whoever is not sick can answer that question. So I found that this is really useful. But it also means that we do have our personal accounts, of course, because we are individuals still somehow. But we also do things like we will always join each meeting, all of us. We don't send one person to a meeting because then you sort of realize that person comes back and they have to tell all the others what happened in the meeting. And then you ask them a question and they say, I didn't think about asking that. I should have thought about that. So it's just easier if everyone goes to every meeting. It's easier if everyone answers every question or is there for answering every question and so forth. So we have a collective team account, and then we have the personal accounts. And so the personal account are usually most like talking to my manager or posting cat pictures. But everything that's related to teamwork is done from the regular account. So you have personal account, cat picture. and team account stuff that is related to the team. So that's our setup. All right, so what do we see as benefits, as main benefits? Because, like I said, I can talk about this forever, so there are so many of them, but I picked a couple of ones that are my favorites. And this one is my favorite. Organic knowledge sharing all the time. At other places, I've often heard things like, we need to get better at documentation. We need to get better at code review. The person who's responsible for this is sick, so we can't do that work. Or I don't have the correct background. I can't pick up that task. But these are things that I've never heard when I worked with software teaming. And knowledge sharing is just such a non-issue for us. A particular person having particular skills is like a non-issue for us. That never happens, that this is a blocker for us. We feel that all of our team members are equal in their knowledge of the design decisions that were made and of the system. And our CTO pointed out that from a management perspective, this is really good for him because he feels that the risks of staffing have been lower because you're not as stuck with an individual that you're scared that they might leave because they're the only ones who knows a particular part of the system. Everyone has a more spread out knowledge. And it's so interesting that this knowledge sharing is just happening all the time without us having to put any effort into it. And there's another aspect of this that I want to bring up. In my experience, there's this fairly common situation where you're looking at code and you're a bit surprised because you see that it's obvious that you could simplify this. There's obviously an easier way to do this. And so you start refactoring into this more easy solution. And then after a few minutes, you go, oh, that's why. Because then you discover this scenario that made it impossible for the previous developer to do the simple solution that you were envisioning. And the previous developer probably tried the same thing as you wanted to do, but that's not recorded anywhere. No one has saved the knowledge of that previous solution. And so that brings me to the next point, which is that you're not just sharing the knowledge, but you're also sharing the thinking that led up to the knowledge. Because when you're doing software teaming, you're there for all the dead ends that happened. You're there when you try to use a certain way of doing it, and you notice that this has these problems, so let's choose another one instead. And then you're there for the next choice, which doesn't pan out. And all of those things, they never get recorded anywhere. You don't put into the Git commit, we first tried this, then that, then this, then that, and now we did this. So that gets lost. But those are important things to learn as well. All of the things that are not actually solutions to these problems. So you're there when you're weighing the pros and the cons, and you're there when you're learning how your colleagues attack problems. Because you're learning their solving tactics. Like when they see this thing that you're trying to do, and they go, oh, I think we should try this pattern. Then you're learning how they're thinking about it. You can ask them, okay, what makes you think that would be a good fit? So you're learning so many other things than you would from just reading a code review or looking at the code behind afterwards. And so all of this decision making, it doesn't actually go into the code. It doesn't get recorded into the code. But when you're sharing it with other people, it sort of gets recorded into the lore. You can tell those stories to other people. Remember the time when we tried to do it this way? That was funny. So those kind of things also get recorded into the team lore. And yeah, you could put that into writing, but let's not kid ourselves about documentation. And another aspect of this knowledge sharing is that not every problem is a programming problem. There are a lot of other things which are closely related to programming that you're encountering in your daily life as a developer. You are reading logs, which you can do in more efficient or less efficient ways. You can try to navigate Google Cloud Platform, for which I could use an entire extra team because I don't know how they made a UI for that. I need someone to tell me, you have to click the thing which doesn't look like a link. And I don't find that very intuitive. But my teammates are helping me, so I'm really happy about that. So the knowledge sharing goes beyond what's coding related. It goes into tooling, it goes into other aspects as well. It goes into learning communication patterns like, oh, you typically need to tell the other department these things before you can ask them a question because they typically need that as a background first. Those are things that you're learning as well. But we all know that knowledge sharing is good, right? The thing that makes a difference here is that you don't have to make an effort into learning these things and sharing this knowledge. I've been to so many retrospectives where people are going like, oh, we should get better at documentation, or we should get better at knowledge sharing. But there's never any concrete actions to that, or the concrete actions are just too difficult to implement. Like the discipline that you need to implement those actions is just too high, so you don't get there. But we don't need a plan for those things. It's just happening day to day. So that's my absolute favorite benefit from software teaming. Another aspect of this is how much clearer I find the solutions to be. And one thing with this is that, well, to begin with, you're sort of forced into one-piece flow because the team can only pick up one thing at a time. So then you have to decide what's an important enough thing to warrant the entire team's attention. The entire team is going to spend time on this. Then it has to be worthy of the team's time. It also means that you're less likely to add all the bells and whistles that you could be adding when you're sitting on your own and just feeling the flow and just, oh, we could have this other feature. You have to justify your ideas to all of the other people in the team, so they have to be good enough for everyone to feel like, yes, we should do this. And this means that you're probably doing a less complex solution. You're also gaining a common understanding of a thing because you can't really start or you can't really complete something unless everyone has understood it fully. And the process of understanding it fully means that you are going to be meeting these aspects where someone doesn't understand one thing about the problem, or you're misunderstanding each other and you have to clarify until it's completely obvious to everyone what it is that you're actually doing. And I come to see that sometimes when you have clarity about a problem, you have a tendency to find a simpler solution for it. It's when you're not really sure what it is that you're doing a lot of complex things around it. And sometimes I also come to see that when we're talking about a feature in such depth, we realize that maybe, hang on, isn't this just a reminder in Slack? Isn't that what they're asking for? So there's a lot of code that actually doesn't get written in that sense. And finally, I feel like we have a clear solution in the sense that you have a holistic, people in the team have a more holistic view of the problem. You come from different backgrounds and different perspectives, so you can contribute to that when you're trying to understand what to do or how to solve it. So these are some aspects of why I feel like a clearer solution is often happening when you're doing software teaming. And another aspect is that it feels like sometimes it's more about the code that you didn't actually write. I feel like we've shifted our pride somehow. Like my personal pride would be how productive I was, and that would often be like in how fast I would finish a thing or how many things I would do. But now we sort of shifted that into being very proud that we did a really good job with the one thing, that this was absolutely the right answer to the question that people had. That we actually solved exactly that problem. And we all talk about how fewer bugs, fewer lines of code mean fewer bugs, and fewer feature means less complexity. Less complexity means faster development time. But in general, I feel that we are just not really being able to hold ourselves back. Okay, maybe I'm projecting here, maybe it's just me, but I feel like I always go beyond when I'm sitting by myself. It goes a bit too fast, and I get a bit too engaged in it. But in general, I believe that the world sort of needs perhaps a little bit less code, but maybe just a little bit more of the truly needed code. All right, final top 3 benefits, and that would be equality. I like the fact that we are helping each other keep up with good habits. It's hard to find the discipline on your own, but when you're a team, reminding each other is much easier. Running the tests, writing the tests first, all of the things that you're trying to decide that you would like to do. You get help from your colleagues to actually do that. I like how it's raising the lowest level to the highest lowest level. Okay, so my knowledge of CSS might be down here, but my colleagues' knowledge of CSS is up here. So what are we producing when we're software teaming? It's the top level. So it doesn't matter that I'm only down here, because our production, what we put into the world, is up at my colleagues' level. And I'm slowly going upwards as well. I feel that we have a tendency also to solve issues at root level. It feels like we're more often don't have the patience for things to just keep popping up. When it's the thing that's, that the build always takes a long time. When it's just you switch over to Facebook and you're looking at that for a while. But when it's the entire team who's just staring at the screen, you have more of an incitament to actually get that fixed. And I find that's an interesting phenomenon. All right, so you're excited, you want to try this, you want to reap the benefits. What are some success factors to making this work? First of all, you need to have curiosity. You need to be more interested in other people than be interested in being right. You need to embrace your curiosity, and I feel like a person who enjoys teaming is a person who is curious about learning new things, who is curious about understanding how other people are reasoning, and those kind of aspects of teamwork. And if you're not interested in learning new ways of working, you're obviously not going to try this to begin with. But also, like new technologies, someone comes along and has an idea for something else. Curiosity in other people, what makes them tick. You're going to be spending a lot of time with your colleagues because you're going to be talking all day. It's not just a coffee break or the morning stand-up and a meeting or the retro. It's every day, all time. So you need to be one to talk to these people. Another thing that is really important, and that's the shared values. And most importantly, that people want to work the same way as you do. If you want to try this out and you realize that the people around you are not even interested in trying it, they're probably not going to be very good at it because they don't have the curiosity, they don't have the incitament of wanting this to succeed. So try to find people who actually want to work in this way and organize yourselves in that way. I feel like we're often organizing ourselves based on competencies, like we need this, and those skills in a team. But skills are learnable. Values are values, you have your values or you don't. So try to group yourselves with the same values rather than perhaps the skills that are matching for your team. And so if you are in a situation where you want to try this out, maybe find some other people who want to do that as well. Maybe if your entire team doesn't want to, but a couple want, you can see, can you carve out some piece of the code that you could be responsible for, or could you make sure that when we're doing these kind of stories, then we're doing software teaming or something like that. But trying to convince people who don't want to do this and trying to sort of make that happen when you don't want to, it's just too difficult. So I would say just people who don't want to do software teaming, just let them be. They'll be fine. They have their own way of working that they enjoy. And surround yourself with people who do want to do it. And then there is patience. So you're learning something new, and that always requires patience. This might be special because it's going to get uncomfortable. There's going to be discomfort here. You are going to have conflicts which are going to become visible, because you might be reading like code that has been checked in. You don't agree how it's written or what it does. But now you're going to have the discussion face to face, and not just, oh, okay, I wouldn't have done it that way, but it's fine. So these conflicts are going to be apparent, they're going to be obvious, and you're going to have to handle them. And that is a thing that is going to require patience. And it's so much easier to end up in these old habits when you realize that it's going to be so much quicker if I just fix this. A bug comes in, you know the code, you know the system, you could have fixed it in 30 minutes, but now instead you're spending the first 30 minutes trying to explain to the others why this even is a bug to begin with. You're going to save that time in the end because you're going to be able to go on vacation. You're not the one who's solely responsible for this anymore. But while you're doing it, it requires patience. And because of this, your colleagues might not always show their best sides in these situations, these uncomfortable situations. So have patience with them, have patience with yourself, because you're not either showing your best side at times. But assume good intent in others. Assume that they're doing the best that they can, and talk to them and make sure that you are kind towards each other in this process. And finally, I have to mention retrospectives. It's super important. That's when you have all of those conversations, which makes this something that improves over time, and finally something that you like to do every day in the best way. So don't skip the retrospectives. Just do it. Let's see. We've been sitting for half an hour. Does everyone want to stand up and then sit down again? Or those who want to stand up and then sit down again, just do that. Yeah, stretch. All right, perfect. Or maybe it's just me that gets restless. Yes, because now we're tackling some challenges, so I needed all the blood in the brains here. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed that with software teaming is that when you encounter a challenge in software teaming, you're sort of stuck in that challenge until you solve it. In other cases, you could have like this conflict at a meeting because you don't agree, but then you go to your desks and it's sort of like it's over until the next meeting when you're going to talk about it again. But here you're in that situation for a long time, and you have to actually make it to solve those conflicts and to solve those challenges. So that's an interesting aspect that you need to be aware of. So one of the things that is going to be pretty obvious to you is when sort of no one knows really what to do. And we typically encounter this when we're learning a new technology, for example. So we were, I'm going to out myself as a .NET developer. We were learning Blazor, and that was new to us. And no one actually really knew how to even get this to work. And first we were sort of getting frustrated because someone was like, oh, bring up a tutorial. And then we were reading the tutorial and someone was saying, oh, don't scroll too fast. I can't read that fast. Someone else was like, can we just start coding, please? And so the thing that happens is that when you're trying something new in this way, people have different learning styles. And not the same thing is going to work for everyone. And it doesn't really work to sit at the same screen and doing the same thing at the same time. So my suggestion when you're in this situation where you would like to explore something is to split up, put a time box. Say, let's meet again tomorrow after lunch. And then everyone has some time to learn something the way that they want to learn it, to read something. Maybe someone wants to do a hello world, someone wants to watch a video, someone wants to draw on a paper, to sketch something. You can do that on your own time, and then you regroup, and then hopefully someone has some idea of how to move forward as a team. So that's the thing that can happen, and you will know that it's time because it feels a bit frustrating, and it's like we don't really have a good strategy here. And then I want to mention something about team size. We have come to find that 3 to 5 people is a good size for this. And this is something that was sort of universal across all the people we talked to, and this was, if physical or remotely, we felt that it was the same. You need to have some sort of a resilience in the team, so less than 3 is bad, because then if someone gets sick or want to go on vacation, stuff like that. So 3 is good. But then there is also a higher limit, because you need the engagement to be good while you're doing the software teaming. You want people to still stay focused, even though they're not actually typing, and so forth. And if you're more than 5, it takes a long time before it's back to you at the keyboard. It's hard to make decisions when you're many people. So yeah, 3 to 5 is what we would say would be optimal. Another challenge is when it's difficult to explain stuff to someone else. Some things are like, if you're trying to describe a graphical user interface, it's really hard to just say that in words, for example. That's an obvious solution thing. But maybe discussing potential architectures, stuff like that, it can be difficult as well. And so what we found is that it's easiest to just, again, split up, time box, let everyone prepare a sketch of something, and then meet back and talk around the sketches and see what are you thinking the same and what are the differences, and have you really understood things the same way. So draw and have a proposed solution. Troubleshooting is another one where it gets frustrating pretty quickly. And my old colleague Dan, we asked him, like, what do you think is a sign of that someone is a senior developer? And he says, a senior developer is someone who reads the error message. Like, no, you have to be kidding me. There has to be a higher standard than that. But, think about it when you're look around. Even I'm like, but the thing is, we use something like, there's an exception, and people go like, oh, I know what it is, and they don't even read it. And I've done that myself. I just, oh, I know what it is. And then you just go in that direction. You're just convinced, oh, it has to be in that direction. Someone else is like, but I think it said something in the error message about, no, okay. But what happens is that people start sort of flailing around when they're troubleshooting in a group. You all have good ideas about what it should be, especially if there's some time pressure on this, like if it's a time-sensitive issue. And what you need to do there is just calm down, relax, try to find a structured way to go about it. Because this is some of the most frustrating times I've had in a software teaming situation. It's when people are a bit stressed and just want to find a bug, and everyone is convinced that they know what it is, and none of us have read the error message. But if you're finding yourself having those frustrations a lot, maybe that's something to spend some time on, like devote one retrospective to talking about how do we do this better as a team. But this also brings me to my final one, and that's something that I heard a lot, which is people start saying this work isn't suitable for teaming. And it's usually in an uncomfortable situation where you start to feel like it would just be easier if I went ahead and did this on my own. And it's understandable because you're uncomfortable. And in that case, it's draining and you're starting to blame the process rather than to trying to solve it. But I would like you to rather acknowledge that this is a learning opportunity. Like, how do we do this work in a teaming situation? Because while I said that sometimes it's good to split up, if the work is related to troubleshooting or related to like the core work of the team, then you shouldn't split up. Because if you're troubleshooting and it's uncomfortable, it's probably something where people are going to be learning about how to troubleshoot these things. So if you're splitting up in that situation, then some people are not getting the same learnings as the others. So while you can split up for things which are where individuals have different styles of doing things, where it's good to brainstorm, those kind of things. When you're doing like core work where you have to have the source code available, then that's a software teaming situation. And I forgot to mention that this computer is my work computer. It does not have the source code for our systems on it. I have never run them locally. Like, that's just a mob computer, the team computer, whatever it's called when you're not saying mob programming. Sorry, software teaming computer. Yeah, work through the uncomfortableness and learn how to do it better. So then what about remoting? Does this style of working suit physical or remote space better? And for me, I haven't found a difference really in doing it in a physical space or rather a remote space. I would suggest that you don't do the hybrid version. I've tried that, but it's a bit more difficult when you have a couple of people who can read each other's expressions and a couple of people who can't do that because they're not in the same room. There's audio problems, stuff like that, when some people are in an office and others aren't. So don't do the hybrid version. I find that when you're remoting, it's easier for everyone to see the screen. You don't have the physical challenge of finding a screen big enough and the space big enough. We are not going back to our office because the sound over there is worse. There's a lot of people talking. We have an open space situation, open office situation where people are just talking everywhere and it's hard to hear each other. So we find that it's much better to just sit at our computers at home. But work the way you would do otherwise. Like if you're in a situation where you feel like, oh, I wish I had a whiteboard and to draw something, find something similar to a whiteboard and draw on it. Like use Miro, or we use PowerPoint sometimes. It's not perfect, but it does the job. So don't let the remoteness be the constraint. Just do the same work, but do it with remote tools instead. One thing that I did find is that it helps to be a bit more vocal. We typically don't use the video when we're doing this. So if someone has an idea and they say their idea and then everyone else is quiet, it's a bit difficult for that person to know if they are thinking about it or if they're deeply offended or whatever happens. So it's nice to like say, oh, let me think about that for a while, maybe something like that, so that you're a bit more vocal about what you're thinking and what you're saying and stuff like that. But in general, there's no big difference. Make sure that you're just like playing some games and doing some fun stuff as well. We're doing Pictionary sometimes where we bring up paint and then one of us draws like a movie or something and the other ones guess what it is, stuff like that. So you can do that. There's more pets when you're remote. That's a plus. I don't know. Yeah. It's fairly undramatic to be remote in my experience. All right. So we're nearing the end. I just wanted to have a bit of a discussion first about teamwork. Because now that I spent like 6 years working in this way, I'm starting to think about what's the other thing called? Like what is it? The thing that I was doing up until 2016. What was that? Like what's the name for that kind of teamwork? And so I wanted to turn the conversation around a bit. If working on the same thing on the same computer at the same space at the same time, if that's software teaming, what's the other thing called? So let's explore that for a bit. And so I started a bit with thinking about what characteristics do these different ways of working have. And so now I'm calling this traditional because I don't have a name for it yet. But I can see that kind of work is split up between individuals. It runs in parallel. You can do many things at once. It can be resource sensitive if you have particular skills that are required for some things. So you have to perhaps plan that. You need to have regular syncs, which you typically see by doing that there are stand-ups or planning meetings or those kind of things where you sync up the work. On the other hand, software teaming, we talked a lot about that. Everyone works on the same thing. But when we're blocked, like the entire team is blocked. And so what do we call this? I tried to come up with some names. And so I'm thinking if I'm talking to programmers, I can use multi-threaded versus single-threaded. And we all see like the pros and cons of those. You can run in parallel, that's pretty good. You need to sync resources, maybe keep track of status, that's the downside. Single-threaded, it can do one thing at a time, it blocks. Like, yeah, that's obvious. Okay, but then if we talk to non-programmers then, regular people around us. And so then the names that I'm proposing here is individual-centered work, individual-centered teamwork on the one side, the one which has work going to the individuals, where the individuals are picking up the work. And then work-centered teamwork on the other side, where people are gathering around the work until it's done, and then picking up another piece of work. And this is something I would love to talk more about. If anyone has any more suggestions, I'm really interested to hear that. Because I feel like we need to talk about the other way, which is not software teaming. Because the question is really, what is sort of normal teamwork? And I would like to change that a bit. And during the disclaimer, I said that for me, this is a perfect way of working, but I think that there are many places where it is a suitable way of working. And I sort of wish that this would be the default option and that you would go to the individual-centered teamwork when it is suitable for those occasions. Like, it should still exist for those people who it suits and the situations where it's suitable. But I wish that the default was different. Because here I'm going to go on a bit of a rant. It feels sort of tiresome to always defend the software teaming way of working, the work-centered way of working, compared to the individual-centered way of working. People come up and ask, like, is software teaming really efficient? I'm like, gee, I don't know. Is individual-centered teamwork really efficient? Can you prove to me that that is an efficient way of working? And what metrics are you using? Because it's not like we were going around doing bug-free software on time, and then software teaming came along and just ruined everything, and now you have to defend that. Sorry, I'm going to calm down a bit. But seriously, like in its worst implementation, individual-centered teamwork is a group of individuals with the same meeting schedule who are working in the same domain or repository. On the other hand, the worst implementation of software teaming is a group of people who don't have meetings but are arguing with each other all the time. But at least you know that there is a problem here. Yeah. All right, but I know that it's scary to do something else. I know that it's scary for people to imagine, like, okay, so what does this mean? This other way of working that we're not used to. But to me, it feels a bit scary to do this thing where you're not sharing knowledge all the time, where you're not finding consensus on designs, where you're not using the highest lower level of knowledge. So I'm wondering if it's maybe time to change the default. All right. I have some final thoughts, but before I get to those, I want to say that we're hiring. And as I said, we're a .NET shop. I'm a C# developer. But since we're doing software teaming, the syntax is less important than your problem-solving skills. So if you're interested in doing software teaming every day, have a chat with us. And I also want to say that I want to talk more about this topic, like I said multiple times. So if it would be interesting for you that I would come to your company, or if you know a conference I should submit this to, then let me know. All right. So then, some final thoughts. I've been talking mostly about this way of software teaming that's 100% all the time. Oh my God, I'm not even an individual. I'm morphed into a team entity kind of software teaming. But I do believe that there can be benefits from this if you're doing it from time to time. So I think that you should try it. And I believe that the same sort of challenges and benefits will apply. The same success factors will apply. Have patience, be kind to each other, know that there will be discomforts, have small retrospectives, and learn from those. I want to remind everyone to just split up whenever you feel like it's going to move the team forward as a unit, but not in other cases. And I wanted to end with these words. So in my perspective, software teaming solves the difficult problem of some of the difficult problems from software engineering by just simply bypassing them. Sharing knowledge, communication, feedback, they're just organically incorporated into our everyday work. With software teaming, you're sharing the decision-making process as well as the final results. You're more likely to build clearer solutions with higher quality. And working together in this way feels like real teamwork. And to me, this is what normal teamwork should be. Thank you. And I guess we have maybe time for questions. But we're in Sweden, so that's not going to happen. I was in France, and people were like, I have a question. Like, no, we only say that to be polite. So we have the Dutch in the front row here.
How much time a day do you spend teaming? Because I found that I'm more of an ambivert, so while I love being here and meeting people, I also love going back home and being by myself. So I don't know if I could do this 8 hours a day.
So the question is, how much time do we spend teaming? Because some people might not have the energy to do it 8 hours a day. Yes. Personally, I'm an introvert, and since I'm doing it remotely, I find that that's the solution for me because my breaks are complete breaks from talking to other people. My breaks are loading the dishwasher, sitting by myself, petting the cats, those kind of things. So I get like proper breaks. If I had to do it in an office, it would be a bit different because then it would be like the coffee breaks or talking to people again. In our case, it is we do take time to do personal development, like having one-on-one with our managers or learning new skills on our own and those kind of things. And then we have some meetings which are separate. But otherwise, it is the whole workday. But then remotely. I don't know how we would solve that in a physical space where I could still feel that I get the breaks that I need. I might have to schedule those in, I guess. Maybe take a longer walk during lunch or something like that. Yeah. Yes, Marcus?
Is there a difference between two people software teaming and pair programming?
Is there a difference between two people software teaming and pair programming? I would say yes, because we're doing all the other stuff as well. That's what I'm doing right now with my colleague. There's two of us. We're answering the emails that people send us. We're doing stuff on Slack. We're preparing presentations for others. So we're not doing the programming only. We're doing the team work as well, if that makes sense. In the back? Mm. Okay, so how do you handle an unbalanced team with senior developers and junior developers, where the junior developers need sort of time to learn, and the senior developer wants to do exciting technological stuff, maybe? Yeah. We had the pleasure of having a very junior developer with us, and we noticed that we needed to allocate time for her to do her own exercises. Like, because when you're a junior, it's incredible to be able to software team because you get all of these amazing people that are sharing their thinking, their knowledge, and how they approach problem solving and so forth. But you also need like a lot of time at the keyboard to get mechanically good at doing the things and to think about it, those problems on your own. So I would say that, okay, we have juniors, that's a commitment that we're making. Let's say that we have some time that they get to spend alone with problems of their own, like sitting by themselves. And then maybe the senior can do some cool hacking stuff, prototyping, stuff like that during that time, something that's exciting to the senior. And then you have both of them getting value out of that time. Some people are learning and others are like doing stuff that could be valuable for the team when they bring that in later. We still have time? No, we don't have any time. But I'm going to stick. I'll be outside. You can talk to me outside and in the halls, and tomorrow I'll be here as well. Thank you so much.